So there's just about 105 days or so to the presidential election, and everyone wants to know where and how things stand at the moment. We know there are 18 parties in the running, with 4 of them considered to be the front runners. That's the APC, the PDP, the Labour Party and the NNPP. But who's got the widest regional spread across Nigeria to give them the best shot at getting into Aso Rock in 2023? And how does it all work when it comes to electorally choosing who becomes Nigeria's next president? Well, you couldn't get better at condensing how it all breaks down and what's at stake for the political parties as well as the electorate than with our experts. And with me tonight to crunch it all, a Rise News analyst and former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmud Jega, and the policy strategist, a Rise News analyst and founder and executive director of Agora Policy, Waziri Adio. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let me come to you first, Waziri. Just break down for us how a general election works in Nigeria for those who might not know. Obviously, we try to educate them as much as we can. Let's start with how this country is divided in terms of constituencies and so on.
Okay, we have 36 states, Federal Capital Territory, and for you to emerge as the winner, you have to score the highest number of votes. That's the first condition. And unlike in other countries where you need to score 50 plus 1, you don't have such a condition here. You just need to score the highest out of the number of candidates, in that particular election. So that's the first thing that you have to meet. The second is that you need to fulfill the spread requirement, which is that you have to score 25% in 2/3 of the states, which is 24 states of the federation. Also, another thing to look at is in terms of the 36 states. The 36 states are divided into 6 zones, 6 geopolitical zones, 3 from the north, 3 from the south. And you have, in the north, you have the north central, you have the northeast and the northwest. The northwest has 7 states. They have the highest. Also, in terms of the number of registered voters, the northwest has the highest. I think now it's like 22.2 million registered voters. Then you have the north central, 6 states, and the northeast 6 states. Then you have the south. The southwest has 6 states. The south has 6 states. The southeast has 5 states. So you have 17 states in the south and 19 states in the north.
Very interesting. And Mahmud Jega, when they go to their polling stations, how does it work? They get a ballot paper with the names of all the candidates, which is the people who are running to be president, for instance. Is that?
Yeah, well, in the presidential election, for example, as you mentioned, there are 18 political parties that are contesting. Now, given our high level of illiteracy, we don't write the names of candidates on the ballot paper. It is the symbol of the political party, which, if you are very illiterate, could sometimes be confusing because some of the party logos are similar.
Look alike and have similar colors as well.
Yeah. But you have it, and we are lucky this time there are only 18 parties on the ballot, because it used to be much more than that. 2-3 election cycles, we had as many as 90 parties, and the ballot paper was so long that it confused many voters. And also there is also the danger that if the ballot paper is so long, if you try to fold it before you put it into the box, the ink might touch another party and it will mar the whole thing. So this time it is 18. So you get accredited first electronically, then you get the ballot paper, you go, it is what we call now the open secret method. The only secret part of it is where you are going to stamp your choice. People are not supposed to see that, although we hear that some voters go with telephones and snap the ballot paper in order to claim benefit from party agents, but it has been outlawed now. I hope we can enforce it. Then you have to come out in public and throw it into the box so that we make sure you are casting only one vote. Now that is very important, because if at the end of the voting there is a discrepancy between the number of accredited voters and the number of votes in the ballot box, the station stands the risk of the entire election being cancelled. So that's basically how.
In a nutshell. Well, thank you very much for that. And what is it about the system this time? And you know, assume that a lot of people don't actually know about this, but what is it about the voting system this time that is different from the last time, from 2019?
Well, I think it's not just 2019. We have to also go back a little bit. Over time, a number of initiatives have been implemented that have also increased people's confidence in the ballot box. Because before then, politicians just enforce their will, so to say. They have different ways in which they go about it. Either they will go there and stuff the ballot box, or they will rewrite the figures, and stuff like that. But from 2015 up to now, and increasingly, technology has been introduced. The first one is a permanent voters card. So you need to have a permanent voters card before you can vote, right? And you need to, there's something called the card reader, right? So your name must be there. You must have the permanent voters card. You must be accredited, so that before, it's not just about how many people are on the register. Because what the politicians used to do is that you say, oh, you have X number of people on the register, so they max it out, right? So they can just say, oh, everybody came out. Nobody fell ill, nobody dropped dead, and nobody transferred to anywhere. So, but that, with technology, the scope for manipulation has been significantly reduced. So that started from 2015. And what you see now, and sometimes too, you see that the voters' turnout has been reducing. And actually, it's possible that the voters' turnout that we get now is more reflective of the actual number of registered voters. Unlike before, where you just cook up, people do multiple registration and all of that. But you can only vote in one place. And you can only vote when your biometrics and all of that, captured, in one place. So, but they have also taken it a step further with the BVAS, right? Where, it's not just your card and your fingerprint being read, but facial recognition and all of that. So because of that, which has been piloted in some elections like in Osun and Ekiti, on account of that, you can't just write figures again. You can't just go and stuff the ballot boxes again, right? So, it has to be that it's not just that you have registered, that you have collected your voter's card, but that you actually turn up and you are accredited. Like Malam Jega said, it's not just about, oh, do you have 22 million, or let's say, for example, in Lagos, you have 7 million registered voters, right? The last election, it was about 6 or something million, but the total number of voters in Lagos was about 1 million, which was about 20% of the registered voters. So there's the scope for manipulating the election, for upturning the wishes of the people, has been significantly reduced. But that has also created, on one hand, that has increased people's confidence in the ballot box and the electoral body and the electoral system. But the other hand, it has also shifted the way politicians behave. Before, what they needed to do was to compromise the electoral officials, the security officials and all of that, because that would not work for them again. So what they now do is that they are now trying to compromise the voters. Right, so that's how the incidence of vote buying also increased, and hopefully, the security agencies, the electoral management body, and all of them will be able to curtail that significantly, so that people are not voting on the basis of who is inducing them, but on the basis of their conscience.
That's a very good analysis, and thank you for setting that out. And for a lot of people who may not understand these things, it's very helpful. And Mahmud Jega, another significant aspect of that trust issue in the electoral system is the way that the results are transmitted, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's double-barreled. There is the electronic transmission, because all the results are automatically transmitted into a server, but that is not the official one, because after the results are declared at each polling unit, immediately when polling closes, it will be filled into a certain form. You know, INEC has all these forms, I can't remember the name.
E8A, E8B, and all of
exactly.
that, yeah.
So you put it in that form, and then the presiding officer, the security people, the party agents, they will all sign. Some will refuse to sign, but it doesn't. Usually a political agent, if his party loses, he will not sign. But it doesn't, it doesn't invalidate the results. So those ones will now be taken physically to the collation center, and the collation centers are at local government level. And then if it is a gubernatorial election, there is a state returning officer at the state headquarters. You also take it to him. And if it is the presidential election, then the state results will also be, as we used to see on television. The INEC chairman is usually the returning officer in the presidential election. So he will sit, I think, in ICI or somewhere, and then the state returning officers will be bringing the results one by one and tabulated. Even though, you know, it had already been done electronically, but to satisfy the provisions of the law, they had to do that.
Right. But that electronic transmission, will that be open to the public to see?
I think it is for subsequent checking when people are contesting the results. It is not immediately available, but you know, there are also all kinds of NGOs that are also monitoring at various levels. Okay, the NGOs cannot be in every polling unit, but they do a scientific sampling. So if they are in, even if it is 20% of the polling units, and they cross-check the results that are from those polling units, and they seem to tally with what INEC has done, then they could say scientifically that...
right. Because if you remember, Waziri, in 1993, I believe, when they had the June 12th election thing, I mean, the reason a lot of people believed it was that there was a big, they didn't do it electronically, but there was a big board where everything was being put so everybody could see it. And that's why everybody presumed that Abiola was the winner of that election. Is that sort of thing, and that's what, for example, happened in Kenya. If you look at Kenya, they had a huge board, they had a place that everybody could see what was being entered, and as it was coming in, you could make that assessment and be confident that what you were seeing was the right thing. Is that likely to be the case?
Okay, just to build on what he said, if you go back to what happened in Osun and in Ekiti, INEC actually has a server, has a portal, where polling unit level results
were entered,
uploaded, in PDF, you know, and maybe, like you said, you know, some NGOs can take it further and make it, you know, in a format that is open data that everybody, because what it means is that if, for example, you have in Osun State, you have 30 local governments, and you have X number of wards and polling units. You have to assess the results one polling unit after the other, and in PDF, and you have to extract it. In any case, the political parties have their own situation rooms, that they have their agents that immediately the results come out, they send to them, they tabulate and all of that. But the fact that you can actually see the results every time, right? Even when you cannot, it takes a lot of effort to aggregate all of them. Also increases the level of trust that people have. But you know, the election, and where it also increases the trust is this. There's this belief that it is not the voting that really is important. It's the counting, it's the tabulation, it's the collation. So that's why, you know, people say don't just vote and go home. Also stay around and protect your vote.
To make sure that so the count is right.
Technology is going to help with that. But the electoral management body can also take it a step further to make sure that, you know, they have like a virtual blackboard, like you said, where the way the results are coming in, people can track that. But, you know, it's also a bit tricky, right? Because if results are coming in piecemeal, you know the way it is. The results of the urban centers will come in first because they are closer to, you know, and that could give people the wrong impression that, oh, if it turns out otherwise, they will say something has happened. So maybe we should just have confidence in the people who have entrusted the job to say that, you know, they will do the work that they have been saddled with, and, you know, with creditably and in good conscience. You know?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, that's brilliantly done by the two of you, and I'm sure the viewers who are watching, who probably weren't very clear on these things, are much clearer now, and that's why you're the analysts, aren't you? I mean, but let's move away from that to the crucial other part of this, which is basically how, because you talked, Waziri, about the constitutional requirement for the main, you know, the parties in terms of them reaching that voter spread across Nigeria. What sense do you get, Mahmud, of where things stand state by state, possibly region by region? Let's take the northern region, for example. What sense do you get of what's your reading of how things break down there in terms of, I mean, I know it's a complicated thing, but let's get a sense of how you see things being sort of distributed across those regions. I give you an example. For example, we got from a very interesting number cruncher, and it came from a very respectable person who takes Kano, for instance, and says that he's pretty confident that Kwankwaso potentially would be getting around 40% of that place, of the votes in that area. And that if you then look, obviously it's not necessarily a scientific, because I mean the vote hasn't taken place, but you know, this is basically analyzing all the things that would influence votes there, and saying that he sees him getting about 40%, and then the other 60% will be distributed, shared between the APC, the PDP, and maybe another of the parties or whatever. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, maybe, you see, let's be frank, I haven't done any scientific poll.
Yeah, no,
I haven't
course.
been to many of these states, but of course, you are in constant touch with people, and we can see the trend from the benefit of my own case, more than 30 years as a political reporter. So maybe we break down the North into the three geopolitical zones, because that's usually how. It's a mix in each zone of many things. It's a mixture of political parties, political personalities, political history, and political issues, and the many other local issues impacting. So if, let's say, we take the Northwest geopolitical zone, which is the largest one, as Waziri said, you know, in the last 4 or 5 election cycles, the single biggest political factor in the Northwest zone was the Muhammadu Buhari personality, which became a hurricane at some stage. Okay, now he is not on the ballot. And not only is he not on the ballot, that Buhari magic seems to have really died down now, which is maybe even why he is not, because in 2015, if you raise your hand anywhere in the Northwest, you are as good as a shoo-in. But now you don't see people campaigning with his poster and their own small picture on one side, which is evidence that the hurricane seems to have dissipated. Okay, without the Buhari factor in the Northwest, the other big factor is that the APC controls 6 of the 7 states, and PDP controls 1, which is very important for political mobilization for elections. Now, you would have thought that since the APC presidential candidate in this election is from the south, and the main rival PDP presidential candidate is from the north, you would have expected a shift in sentiment and support towards that side. But my observation is that it does not seem to be happening. Maybe too much water has passed under the bridge in the last 2 election cycles, and it doesn't look as if the APC core base of support is shifting to PDP because of the regional origins of the presidential candidate. That's the Northwest. Now, do I go on to Northeast zone? Okay, the Northeast zone also, Buhari used to be a huge political factor in most of the states. Not all, but in many of them, especially in Borno, Yobe, Bauchi, and Gombe. Now, again, this time he is not on the ballot. So the second important factor is control of states. Now, out of the 6 states in the Northeast zone, APC controls 3, Borno, Yobe, and Gombe, and PDP controls the other 3, Adamawa, Taraba, and Bauchi, even though, as we saw recently, PDP has a problem with the governor of Bauchi state, even though they might reconcile. Now, the other very big factor to consider here is that the PDP candidate Atiku Abubakar is from the Northeast, and really in the last 20-something years of this republic, he had worked very hard to create a Northeastern consciousness with himself as the leader since 1999.
Right.
But my own observation was that it didn't work very well.
Okay.
There was no crystallization really of a Northeastern consciousness outside the northern general far northern political perception of Nigerian politics, essentially as North versus South, because that's how Northerners mostly see
and just
politics.
very briefly, North Central, is that a toss-up?
Okay, the North Central...
Very briefly, because I need to get to him before we close.
Okay, the North Central also has 6 states. 5 of them APC control, which gives it. But you know, many of the states that came into the APC fold in 2015 came for various local reasons, not necessarily because of the Buhari persona that was dominant in the north, like Kwara, Kogi, Plateau, and even Benue at the time. They all came in for different local reasons.
Okay, let me come to you, Waziri. I'm sorry we've taken quite a bit of time here, but as briefly as you can, how's it looking in the south?
Well, it's going to be interesting. There are 2 strong candidates from the south, and it's expected that the candidates will also enjoy the homeboy factor. You know, in the southeast, for example, which used to be the stronghold of PDP, but now you have, you know, somebody from Labour Party, which doesn't actually control any state in the southeast. You have 2 states controlled by PDP, 2 states by APC, and 1 by ABGA. But it should be expected that Mr. Peter Obi of Labour Party will win comprehensively in the southeast. It also should be expected that the governors of the PDP, which used to win like used to score like 80%, 88% in the southeast, will also be competitive in the southeast. APC, I'm not too sure, but the APC scored 17% in the southeast in 2019. Maybe they will still be within that range. That's the southeast. In the southwest, that's the home base of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It should also be expected to perform very well there. But PDP is also very strong in the southwest. The same thing, Labour Party is also expected to do well in Lagos, at least in Lagos. You know, but PDP is likely to be competitive in Lagos, in Osun, and maybe Oyo. But Ahmed Tinubu is going to likely take the lead in the southwest. The south. Interestingly, used to also be the one of the strongholds of the PDP. Actually, out of the 6 states in the south, PDP still controls 5 out of the 6. The only one that is APC is Cross River, right? And even that one is a bit touch and go. But interestingly, the south is likely to be a toss-up with PDP in the lead. I think APC will be competitive in the south. Labour Party will be competitive in the south also. Okay, I want to thank both of you. Absolutely brilliant work this evening. Thank you very much indeed. Waziri Adio and of course Mahmud Jega. Thank you ever so much.